Hey, what's up, guys? Topic of the day is weapon priority. What is weapon priority or stun priority? Well, after you land a hit on your opponent, can you land a second one, or is your opponent able to attack you or trade with you out of stun? Can your opponent just hype armor through your next attack? Or what is your next option, really? Well, this is unfortunately a good thing and an issue that Elden Ring has. Let me explain. Depending on your weapon and setup, you'll keep priority after you land a hit on your opponent, or you won't. And sometimes this is a good thing, and sometimes this is a bad thing. When is it a good thing where you don't keep priority? I think it's a good thing with stuff that's like very fast and unreactable. Like for instance, if you are to hit someone with a dagger, if you hit someone with a dagger, if you were to keep priority with that dagger all the time with unreactable attacks, that would be a problem. Because the dagger is unreactable, and so you basically get vortexed to death with that dagger. It is not the case. You can you can stun someone with like jumping R2s into jumping R2s, but this isn't really like something you have to worry about and like getting vortexed by, you know what I mean? So you don't keep priority with daggers, and that's a good thing. Now though, if you take a look at something like let's say you are talking about a two-handed axe. A two-handed axe, it doesn't need to be the warped axe, it could be the hand axe even, which is very, very fast now. Well, even the warped axe cannot keep priority. If you land one hit with the warped axe, then the second hit or your follow-up attack is going to be poisonable by your opponent. And then if you stagger the first hit into another first hit of your chain, then that's going to leave enough time for your opponent to attack you out of stun or hype armor you out of stun. And so that makes the setup not as good at keeping aggression. Now, you can circumvent that by using Ashes of War. For instance, if you are fighting another hand axe, let's just say it's a hand axe mirror, two hand axe fighting each other. Well, you could do a normal R1, and to keep priority, you could go and use some sort of Ash of War, like for instance, Sword Dance. So you do an R1 into a Sword Dance. Your opponent will have time to attack you out of stun, but they will trade with the Sword Dance and you'll win the trade. And then after you win that trade, you'll still have priority for another attack cleanly. So you kind of win the exchange there. So that's an example of a situation that can be like circumvented where you can keep priority. Now let's look at other setups. A good setup that always keeps priority is something like what we're using right now, Power Stance Great Spears. Power Stance Great Spears crouch attack will keep priority to another crouch attack. That's one of the biggest reasons why this setup is so good. It's very, very useful so that people cannot just attack you out of stun. Unfortunately though, some stuff in the game has very fast hype armor startup, and there's always stuff that can hype armor out of stun against like pretty much everything in the game. So there's much less of that now. Like before the DLC type patch, we had like Storm Assault that could be activated on frame 1, and so you'd be able to hype armor out of pretty much everything. That's not really the case anymore. But there's still some, some attacks in the game. Like for instance, Lion Claw, I believe, has hype armor frame 1. I could be wrong there, maybe they changed it, but stuff like that though is not really much of a problem because they're so slow that you have time to get out of it. But that's just an example that comes to my mind right now. But yeah, a weapon like PSGS will keep priority. Another interesting one that keeps priority is the Sight. Sight R1, staggered R1 into another R1, keeps priority, and that's very nice because this allows to keep pressure on someone and to mix them up and to kill them in a matter where they are forced to roll your attacks as opposed to being able to trade into your attacks. That's something that's fairly important for setups, because that's how you kill people quickly. If they can just attack out of stun, then it drags the fight and it forces you to play careful. So basically, after you land any hit, you're forced to stand back because your opponent is going to have attack priority out of stun. You don't want that. Now, with that being said, there's also hyper armor weapons, like ultra weapons, like what my opponent is using now, the ultra greatsword. Stuff like that obviously will keep priority, but I think that's definitely a good thing, because you don't want big weapons like that to not keep priority because they're very, very slow. So that's definitely something that that we need to appreciate. However, not every weapon benefits from keeping priority like that. Big weapons usually don't have that issue, but small weapons have a hard time keeping priority. Like in the case of a one-handed straight sword, for instance. Again, if you're not using like an Ash of War like sword dance, that will force a trade. And even then, sometimes if you're attacking a hyper armor weapon, like let's say you are using a one-handed straight sword or sword and board, the classic, against a great sword, well, as soon as you land your first hit with your R1, then your options are really limited, because the greatsword now is likely going to do an attack out of stun, and that attack out of stun is likely going to beat whatever options you have available. You can still do something like, you can still do a Lion's Claw with your straight sword, and I don't know, maybe they will even have time to escape it. Like, there are a few really bad Ashes of War that have a lot of hyper armor that might be able to hyper armor through their next attack, but for the most part, they're very, very slow and hard to land, which doesn't really make for an ideal situation. When you contrast that with previous games, let's say the one that came before that with Dark Souls 3, if you landed a straight sword hit on someone, you kept priority, meaning that you would be able to land a second R1 unless they... Well, I mean, it comboed, but you would be able to land a second R1, and then even after that second R1, you would be able to have priority for a third R1, so your opponent was forced to roll out, and so that allowed you to mix up your straight sword with R2s. Here the problem in Elden Ring is, as after you land that hit with your straight sword, because you really only have one really bad slow option, it makes it so that you can't really do an R2 after your R1 with your straight sword, because your opponent is likely going to be able to react to it, because he only has to worry about dodging the very slow attack that you have in your kit, because your fast or medium speed attack, which is the follow-up R1, is not going to stun them. And so that allows like anyone really to escape a straight sword without any issue whatsoever, or even attack out of it. And so that makes the the one-handed straight sword really bad, unfortunately, because of that that aspect. So a lot of weapons suffer from that. Now, I'm not going to touch on the topic of poise, but the issue I just mentioned was something that already existed with the straight sword. When the first hit always stunned, which it doesn't now. You need 110 poise to tank it. But the follow-up, I believe, does very low poise damage, and so you can also poise that right now, like fairly easily. I think most people will poise that. And so either way, no matter how you look at it, this setup is heavily affected by this lower poise damage on the second hit, and that lower poise damage on the second hit has a reason to exist for very fast weapons that you do not want to vortex, because they are either unreactable or close to unreactable. Something like thrusting swords, something like even the hand axe, which is fairly fast as well, something like daggers, you know, even to an extent probably curved sword like Shamshir. Weapons like that should be as they are right now, where you can poise the follow-up attack, and that lets you escape their pressure, basically. Otherwise, if it was the other way around, escaping that pressure would be a guessing game, because their attacks are simply too fast, and you can't really reliably get out of it. But unfortunately, that does affect weapons that are either medium speed, very reactable, that don't do a lot of damage, and that don't have that much in their kit that's threatening. Like, for instance, a one-handed straight sword. The classic sword and board is affected by this. So the classic sword and board has difficulties aggressing because it lacks options to keep priority, at least options that are not abysmally slow. Like I said, you can still do jumping heavy into jumping heavy, but that's very slow and that's very reactable. What other weapons should we talk about? Yes, there are some spells that keep priority like that too. Like, for instance, a good example of a spell that's very, very powerful, especially for the purpose of keeping priority, is Catch Flame. Because the second Catch Flame doesn't suffer from the same flaw as the weapons we just mentioned. The second Catch Flame will always poise break, just like the first Catch Flame that comes out. And so that gives you a fast attack that's reliably going to stun your opponent, and they're going to need to respect it. And so that enables you to mix up after your first Catch Flame, because you have priority for the second one, so your opponent needs to respect that a second one is coming. Therefore, their first reflex is going to be to roll instead of attacking out of stun. So that allows you to do a slower attack to mix up their timing. So for instance, Catch Flame into Flame Strike, something like that. Now that makes a lot of sense. And it's the same reason why Flame Strike is so much better on weapons that are like bigger and slower. Like, for instance, it's Catch Flame on sight is much more effective than Catch Flame. Sorry, I said Catch Flame. Flame Strike, my bad. Flame Strike on sight is much more effective than Flame Strike on Straight Sword, or Power Stance Straight Sword even. Because with Power Stance Straight Sword, the stun is too small. And you don't keep priority with... actually, you don't keep priority with anything but the follow-up L1. So the fact that they can escape faster by rolling, for instance, if you do Power Stance L1 with Straight Sword into another Power Stance L1, your opponent is going to roll it, because that's what's expected, because that's the attack where you keep priority. Now the problem is, if you do a Flame Strike to mix up out of that, because the stun is so small, the same roll that they would have done to escape the Power Stance follow-up attack is going also to dodge the Flame Strike that comes after. So it's not really a mix-up. It's not going to work in that situation. Where if you take something like the Sight, for instance, Sight R1 into either follow-up R1 or crouch attack into another crouch attack, you keep priority, so your opponent will, let's say, expect the follow-up R1 or the follow-up crouch attack, but the difference is the stun is large enough, and so a follow-up with a Flame Strike is going to have the correct timing for the flame to catch. So if you try to roll right after a sight attack, you'll get caught by the Catch Flame, and it's going to require a different timing in order to avoid it. So that's why some Ashes of War like Catch Flame, or I keep saying Catch Flames, like Flame Strike, are better on slower weapons, because one, they keep priority, and two, they also have enough stun. So with the example of the Power Stance Straight Sword, the weapon kept priority but didn't have enough stun. With the one-handed Straight Sword, it doesn't keep priority and it doesn't have enough stun. So that's why something like Flame Strike is better for, like, let's say, Great Swords, Sights, Curved Great Sword, and stuff like that. The timing is just more appropriate to catch someone panic rolling, basically. So that's going to cover the little topic for today. Just wanted to talk about a little bit of like weapon priority, because it's something that is not really discussed much, like very often, but it's really something that affects matchups like so much and dictates a lot of time like who is going to win a fight, simply because in the long run you're going to keep priority over your opponent while they're not. And like I said, weapons like very fast weapons that are like borderline unreactable don't really suffer as much from that, because you're basically almost guaranteed to win neutral with them, at least most of the time. So this really mostly affects weapons that are not fast enough to make that difference. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick vid, and I'll catch you guys up next time. Take care, guys. Have to be careful about the bone bow. I basically can't stop running here because of bone bow. They're both pretty shit, but can't fight bone bow with two people. This game is kind of stupid. Okay, I have a teammate that's coming in there though, so go back. We're gonna be fine. Can't do that. Be careful, because Bone Bow is coming. Sleep Bone Bow is coming. Hey, Dr. Bear. Yep. Okay, that's my teammate. My teammate following? Yeah, yes, alright. I feel like my teammate is just gonna kill the host this time. Okay, no hit for me. Okay, Dr. Bear. No help from Dr. Bear. Oh, I get shit net though. Okay, our teammate is back there. Oh my god, dude. Can anyone survive for fucking a minute or two? Come on, game. Finally, some real reinforcement. I have to be careful, teammate's not there yet. But watch it if they fucking boss fog or something. Careful, Steel. Like all they do is stall, and like all they do is stall until a 2v1. That's literally all they've been doing. I don't know how that missed. I can't be like as aggressive because I'm out of a lot of stuff. Okay, let's go on the bow guy. I think that's the more treacherous one. For Steel, I mean. Surprised that didn't connect. Great game. Your full steal. Oh my god, dude. I'm just out of everything, like... Now we have to be careful about this. Even if it's a 2v2, like, I'm out of everything. Like, I can hardly really aggress. It's like we're doing little chippy damage. Like, we're doing one poke at a time. Okay. That's smart. Kukri! That's it. Fitting. Jesus Christ, dude. Well, I mean, to give them credit, at least they never turned off the tongue the whole time.